The night before we were supposed to sign for our dream home, I woke up to a banking alert. Our account balance was zero. $250,000 gone in the middle of the night. My husband's explanation was almost insulting. It's for Mom's project. You'll see, it's for us. But he didn't know that I was the sole legal owner of that account. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled, because he had no idea that by the time this was over, every dollar he stole would burn a hole in his future, and I'd be the one holding the match. I had spent months picturing the moment. Me and Daniel signing the papers, holding that tiny gold key I'd framed in our living room, then walking into a house that was finally ours. That key had been his gift on our first anniversary, a promise carved in metal. "Someday we'll hang the real one right next to it," he'd said. I believed him. After all, we had worked for this. Long hours at the firm for me. Steady shifts at his tech job for him. We were partners, or so I thought. The night before closing, I went to bed with everything neatly arranged. Contracts in a folder, my outfit for the meeting pressed and ready. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a banking alert. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another security update, but something in my chest tightened. I unlocked my phone, and my eyes froze on the words, "Balance $1,000." At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe the bank was doing maintenance. But the transaction history told another story. A single transfer, $250,000, executed at 2:47 a.m. to an alphanumeric string I didn't recognize. The destination was marked only as external wallet. My blood went cold. I padded into the kitchen, my bare feet silent against the tile. Daniel's laptop was still open on the counter, a faint blue glow on the screen. I hesitated before sliding into the chair. The browser window showed a crypto exchange, the kind I knew could vanish funds in seconds. I clicked the most recent transaction. The receiving wallet was registered to a shell company called Green Dawn LLC. It wasn't an unfamiliar name. I had seen it in passing on state filings while doing research for a client, incorporated just 2 months ago in Nevada. Registered agent, Margaret Hayes, my mother-in-law. I stared at the name until the letters blurred. The edges of the gold key in my mind seemed to warp, twist, become something sharp. Footsteps creaked behind me. Daniel walked in, rubbing his eyes like he'd just woken up. "What are you doing up?" I turned the laptop toward him. "Want to explain this?" He glanced at the screen, then shrugged. Actually, shrugged. "It's for Mom's project, a community center. She needed the funds now to secure the property. It's for the family." "The family," I repeated, my voice flat. "And that's supposed to justify emptying our savings without asking me?" He leaned against the counter, adopting that patient tone he used when he thought I was overreacting. "Babe, you're making this bigger than it is. It's an investment, and you'll see returns." Something in me clicked. Not anger yet, just a kind of cold clarity. "Whose account was that?" "Ours," he said automatically. I shook my head. "No, Daniel, legally it's mine. You're an authorized user, but the ownership is in my name only. Every cent in that account is traceable to my income." His face twitched, just for a second before he forced a smile. "So, you're my wife. What's yours is ours." I didn't answer. I couldn't trust my voice not to break, and I refused to give him that satisfaction. I walked past him, back to our bedroom, my mind racing. The old Laura, the one who trusted people to play fair, might have confronted him right there, demanded the money back. But that Laura wouldn't survive this. When I set my phone on the nightstand, it buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. "They're already covering their tracks. Soon there will be no record you ever had that money." My heart pounded. Whoever sent that knew exactly what had happened. I typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. I lay there in the dark, staring at the gold key framed on the wall across from our bed. I'd once thought it was a symbol of our shared dream. Now it felt like a joke, a mocking reminder that I'd built a future on a foundation someone else could rip away while I slept. By morning, Daniel was gone. Left early, he'd said in a note, to help his mother finalize the deal. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the company filings for Green Dawn LLC. No physical address, just a P.O. box. No employees listed. And the registered agent, Margaret Hayes, was already tied to 2 previous LLCs dissolved under suspicious circumstances. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black and bitter, and stared out the window at the pale winter sky. Somewhere in the distance, they were probably congratulating themselves. They thought I'd panic. They thought I'd plead. They thought I'd wait. But I wasn't going to do any of those things. I was going to find out exactly how deep this went. And when the time came, I'd make sure they never saw me coming. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. My phone vibrated again. The same number as before. A new message. If you want to win, don't go to the bank. Watch the wallets instead. I smiled just slightly. Whoever this was, they understood the game. And I was ready to play. When Daniel came home that night, I made sure my face told the story he wanted to believe. I kept my eyes wide, my voice quiet, my shoulders rounded as if the weight of what he'd done had broken me. "If you think it's for the best," I said, pushing my tea back and forth between my hands, "then I guess we'll see." The relief that washed over him was almost insulting. He thought the conversation was over. He kissed the top of my head and went straight to the shower, humming as if nothing had happened. While the water ran, I slid into my home office, closing the door with deliberate softness. My laptop was already open, a blockchain explorer queued on the screen. The anonymous wallet from last night was my starting point. Every crypto transaction leaves a trail, even if the amateurs think otherwise. You just have to know how to follow the breadcrumbs. The first hop was through a popular exchange, one I knew had weak KYC protocols. The second hop was trickier, a mixer service designed to scramble transactions into dozens of micropayments. But mixers aren't perfect. There's always a lag, a signature pattern in the block times. I leaned closer to the screen, heart rate steady, and there it was. A 3-second delay between packets, exactly the kind of thing we used to track in my old job. My old job, something Daniel never fully understood. When we met, I told him I worked in finance. The truth was more specific. I'd spent 8 years in a bank's anti-money laundering division, tracing illegal funds across continents. I'd helped take down shell corporations, darknet marketplaces, even a South American trafficking ring. I was good at finding money that wanted to disappear. And now, my own husband's family had made the mistake of thinking I was just a wife with a spreadsheet habit. By the time Daniel stepped out of the shower, the trail was clear. The funds had been split into 3 wallets, 2 of which linked back to Green Dawn LLC. The third was something else entirely, a personal wallet that had been active for years, with large inflows every quarter. The owner had hidden well, but not perfectly. The metadata pointed to the same IP range as a luxury condo in Miami. Margaret Hayes had a second home she'd never mentioned. I closed the laptop and returned to the kitchen before he noticed. He was already scrolling on his phone, grinning at whatever message he'd just read. I kept my face blank, poured him a drink, and asked about his day. Let him think I'd accepted my role in his little story. But that night, after he fell asleep, I retrieved a small hardware wallet from the safe under my desk. Inside was my own insurance policy, $500,000 in Ethereum, bought before I ever met Daniel, from a series of early investments that had quietly exploded in value. No one else knew it existed. Still, money alone wasn't enough. I needed leverage, proof, and a way to make the truth undeniable. That's when I thought of him, Evan Cruz. 3 years ago, he'd been a rising star in tech journalism before he got tangled in an NFT scam run by none other than Margaret Hayes. She'd promised him exclusive access to a revolutionary art platform, then used his coverage to lure in investors before vanishing with the funds. He lost his job, his reputation, and his savings. I found him on Twitter, still posting threads about blockchain fraud, still chasing the people who'd burned him. My DM was short. I think we have a mutual enemy. and I have proof." He replied within minutes. We met the next day in a quiet coffee shop, both careful not to be seen. I slid a folder across the table. Wallet addresses, transaction IDs, screenshots. He scanned them quickly, nodding. "This is solid. Better than anything I had." "I want her exposed," I said. "Not just her, the whole network, but we can't go at them head on. We need them to come to us." Evan leaned back, thinking. Then he grinned, a sharp, satisfied expression. "A honey trap." "Exactly," I said. Over the next week, we built it. A fake blockchain project complete with a slick website, white paper, and fabricated community buzz. We called it Aurora Node, a supposedly groundbreaking cross-chain platform offering absurd returns for early investors. Every detail was designed to appeal to people like Margaret. Greed dressed as innovation. We seeded rumors in the right Discord channels, sent exclusive invitations to a handful of wealthy but gullible crypto enthusiasts. And we made sure one of those invites accidentally landed in an inbox connected to Margaret's Miami condo IP address. The waiting was the hardest part. I kept up my act at home, letting Daniel believe I was focused on moving past the money issue. He didn't notice the late-night calls, the encrypted messages between me and Evan. He didn't see the quiet satisfaction in my smile when, 3 days later, the Aurora Node wallet received its first deposit. It was from Green Dawn LLC. The first sign that something had shifted came on a Tuesday morning. I was sipping coffee when my phone erupted with notifications, mentions, tags, and messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. At the top was a video link. I clicked, and there I was, sitting at our dining table, pen in hand, signing what looked like a stack of financial documents. My voice, my face, said, "I authorize the transfer of $250,000 to Green Dawn LLC, without condition." It was flawless. Every blink, every movement, the subtle inflection of my voice, it was me. Except it wasn't. I knew instantly what it was. Deep fake. Whoever made it had studied hours of footage, probably lifted from home videos, family gatherings, even my own social media. Within hours, the video was everywhere. Crypto forums called me the greedy wife who turned on her family. Facebook comment sections lit up with strangers condemning me. Even a few acquaintances texted asking if it was true. By noon, a local gossip channel picked it up, framing it as a scandal. High-powered financial advisor turns on husband's family over charity funds. The narrative wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my character, my supposed betrayal. I didn't have children, but Daniel and I had talked about it. In the quiet between headlines, I realized what they were doing. If this blew up enough, and if a divorce followed, they could frame me as untrustworthy, unfit. Any custody battle in the future would be theirs to win before it even started. That night, I called Evan. "We need to go public, not just the trap, everything." He hesitated. "If you push too soon, we lose the bait." "I don't care. This isn't just about the money now. They're trying to erase me." We worked through the night. From my home security system, I pulled the original footage from that day, the real scene they'd manipulated. In reality, I'd been signing a shipment receipt for a new set of dining chairs. No mention of money, no Green Dawn LLC. The lighting, my posture, even the shirt I wore matched the fake perfectly. The next morning, I released the real video across my social accounts, side by side with the deepfake. I broke it down frame by frame, pointing out the subtle AI glitches, unnatural eye movements, the microsecond lip misalignment. Within hours, my post gained traction. But traction wasn't the same as vindication. The internet split into two camps. One side believed me, rallying with hashtags about deepfake dangers. The other side doubled down, claiming I'd staged the original video to cover my tracks. Then came the next blow. Someone, or more likely, the person pulling Margaret's strings, started leaking a steady stream of fabricated evidence. Fake emails between me and offshore brokers, doctored screenshots of chat logs suggesting I'd tried to move funds out of the country, even a photoshopped photo of me stepping out of a private jet with a man I'd never seen before. It was chaos. Every time I refuted one lie, two more appeared. The rhythm was intentional, overwhelm the truth with sheer volume so no one could keep up. Evan called late that night, his voice tight. They're running a coordinated smear. I've seen this before. It's not just Margaret. She doesn't have the resources for this level of digital warfare. So who does? I asked. Someone who knows how to manipulate public opinion on a large scale, and they're paying for bot farms. That's why every post about you is flooded with the same comments, word for word. I paced the room, my mind racing. If we don't flip the narrative soon, the trap won't matter. Even if we catch them with Aurora Node, the public will see me as the villain. Then we make the trap bigger, Evan said. We feed it so much that they can't resist biting. I stopped pacing. How? We make Aurora Node public enough that they have to show their faces to claim it, not just wallet addresses, video calls, public endorsements. If they want to cash in, they'll have to attach themselves to it in ways they can't later deny. It was risky. The more visibility we gave Aurora Node, the more chance we had of real investors getting caught in the crossfire. But if we built the rollout carefully, we could control who got in, sock puppet accounts linked to Margaret's network, and no one else. For now, though, I had to survive the storm. I shut down comments on my accounts, funneled all communication through Evan, and doubled my digital security. Every password changed. Every device swept for spyware. But late one night, while I was scrolling through the wreckage of my online presence, I saw a comment that made my skin crawl. It was from an anonymous account, the same one that had warned me about the money disappearing. They're losing patience. When they can't win online, they'll come for you in person. The warning stayed with me all night, but fear eventually hardened into something sharper. I wasn't going to wait for them to knock on my door. If they wanted a fight, I would choose the battlefield. Evan and I spent 3 straight days refining Aurora Node into the perfect bait. We built a token from scratch, polished branding, fake but convincing white paper, roadmap packed with technical jargon that meant nothing but looked impressive. The promise was simple. Triple your investment in 2 weeks, guaranteed thanks to proprietary yield amplification algorithms. We both knew those words were nonsense. Margaret and her shadow advisor wouldn't care. Behind the glossy facade, we embedded a tracking system. Every wallet that sent funds to Aurora Node would be routed through a shell exchange connected to a federal financial crimes task force. The moment money hit the wallet, it would be frozen, documented, and linked to the sender. The first invitations went out under our sock puppet accounts, exclusive friends and family access to an early round of the token sale. Within 12 hours, Green Dawn LLC had transferred $50,000. That was just the opening move. Over the next week, the deposits kept coming. Smaller amounts at first, then larger ones, split across multiple wallets. We watched in real time as the blockchain ledger filled with their fingerprints. Every transaction was mirrored to the federal team monitoring in the background. On the 9th day, the big one landed. A single transfer worth $200,000 from a wallet we hadn't seen before. It was clean, no connection to Green Dawn, until Evan traced the IP metadata to a luxury condo in Miami, the same one I'd found weeks ago, Margaret's secret residence. 2 days later, the trap snapped shut. The feds executed the freeze orders, locking every coin they'd sent. It was over in minutes. No warning, no chance to move the funds. We had them, but it wasn't enough to simply seize the money. We needed the world to see them for what they were. Evan went public, releasing every shred of evidence we'd compiled, incorporation documents, transaction histories, screenshots of private messages, even a leaked recording of Margaret bragging to her advisor about bleeding the girl dry before she figures it out. The internet exploded. Headlines shifted overnight from greedy wife turns on family to crypto scam mastermind exposed. Hashtags that had once vilified me now turned against them. Old victims of Margaret's schemes came forward, adding their voices to the storm. I should have felt vindicated. But then Daniel appeared on a primetime interview, eyes red, voice trembling. I just don't understand why she would do this, he told the reporter. "Laura's obsession with money has destroyed our family. My mom was building something for the community, and now everything's gone." It was masterful. The interviewer leaned in with sympathetic eyes, the camera catching Daniel's quivering lip. They aired photos of us smiling at barbecues, holding hands on vacation, standing in front of that gold key in our living room. The implication was clear. I had turned on love for greed. The comment sections ignited again, not as vicious as before, but enough to sting. Some people would never see past his performance. They didn't care about the blockchain records or the federal warrants. They cared about the tearful husband betrayed by his cold-hearted wife. I sat in my apartment, the documents still open on my laptop, and let the noise wash over me. It would be easy to chase the narrative, to argue with every stranger who got it wrong. But I'd learned something in the last month. You can't win every heart. You only need to win the ones that matter. The next morning, I received official confirmation. Margaret Hayes and her advisor had been served. Their crypto assets were seized pending trial, their accounts frozen. Green Dawn LLC was under full investigation for fraud, wire transfer violations, and money laundering. It wasn't the end, not yet. They'd fight, hire lawyers, spin stories. Daniel would keep playing the grieving husband. But they no longer held the board. I did, and I had one final move left. Winning in court was nothing like I imagined. There was no applause, no cathartic wave of relief, just the dull finality of a judge's gavel and the sterile acknowledgement that I was legally exonerated. The evidence was airtight. The accounts were frozen. My name was cleared on paper. But outside the courthouse, the world was far messier. Some people celebrated the verdict, sending me messages of support. Others doubled down on the image Daniel had painted, the ambitious wife who cared more about money than marriage. A few clients who'd trusted me for years quietly withdrew their contracts, citing a need to avoid controversy. It didn't matter that the controversy wasn't my doing. In finance, perception was as powerful as truth. Margaret and her advisor vanished from the city overnight. Rumor had it they'd left debts behind. Business partners suddenly unpaid, private loans in default, and a trail of half-finished scams littered across 3 states. I thought that chapter of my life was closed, but the mess they left behind had a way of bleeding into mine. 2 weeks after the verdict, I was served papers for a civil lawsuit. A group of small investors claimed that because I interfered with Green Dawn LLC, I was responsible for the collapse of their investment. The irony was bitter. I had saved them from losing more, yet I was the one they targeted. My lawyer assured me it wouldn't stick, but every legal battle drained energy, time, and money. Evan kept digging into the man we'd been calling the advisor. He was meticulous, piecing together shell company ties, matching IP addresses, connecting offshore accounts. The picture that emerged was far uglier than I'd expected. His real name was Patrick Vance. 15 years ago, he'd been a rising political figure, a state senator with a spotless record and a carefully groomed public image. Then came a quiet scandal, allegations of accepting bribes from foreign corporations. The charges never stuck, but his career imploded. He disappeared from politics, resurfacing years later in the gray markets of international finance. Patrick wasn't just another scammer. He was a strategist. His network spanned continents with ties to at least 4 ongoing money laundering cases, and he had something far more dangerous than money: connections. When Evan handed me the dossier, my stomach sank at the final page, a list of local officials who had met with Patrick in the last year. Some of them were now overseeing the investigation into Green Dawn LLC. "This is why the case is dragging," Evan said. "They're slow-walking it for him." The realization was sobering. I had been fighting Margaret and Daniel, thinking they were the head of the snake. They weren't even close. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the dossier spread out in front of me. The gold key still hung on the wall, but I'd stopped looking at it as a promise. It was just metal now, a reminder of what I'd already lost. The weight of it all pressed down on me. Even winning felt like losing in slow motion. Near midnight, my phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number. No greeting, no context, just a line of text that made my skin prickle. "We can reach you anywhere." I stared at it, my mind running through possibilities. Was it a bluff, a warning, or the prelude to something worse? I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came seconds later. "Walk away, Laura. This isn't your fight anymore." My first instinct was anger. How dare they think they could scare me into silence? But underneath, there was something else, the cold knowledge that this wasn't an empty threat. Patrick Vance had survived in the shadows for years because he knew how to make problems disappear. Sleep didn't come easily. I left the lights on, checking the locks twice, listening for every creak in the building. In the quiet, my mind went back to the investors, the clients I'd lost, the future I'd almost had. How many more lives had Patrick wrecked without anyone noticing? How many people didn't have the skills or resources to fight back? By morning, the decision was made. If the fight was bigger than Margaret and Daniel, then so be it. I hadn't survived this far to hand the win back to someone worse. Patrick wanted me to walk away. I was going to run straight toward him. I sent Evan a single line. "We go after Vance next." His reply was immediate. "Then we'd better be ready to burn the whole thing down." The conference hall in Geneva was filled with people who'd seen everything the financial world could throw at them. Investors, regulators, policymakers. But as I stepped up to the podium, I knew most of them had never seen the kind of war I'd fought. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them how my husband and mother-in-law emptied my savings in the dead of night, how they used crypto and deep fake technology to try to erase me. I laid out the structure of the scam, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, and finally the man behind it all, Patrick Vance. I told them about the fear, the threats, the way the system bent under the weight of his connections. "This isn't just my story," I said, my voice steady over the room's silence. "It's the story of every person who's been told to stay quiet, every victim who's been made to feel powerless. It's proof that money can be hidden, reputations can be destroyed, and justice can be delayed unless we change the game." When I finished, there was a beat of silence before the applause began. It swelled until it filled the hall, but it wasn't the noise that mattered. It was the faces leaning forward, the officials from different countries exchanging glances, the quiet nods from people who'd been skeptical before. Within 48 hours, the speech had gone viral. Clips of it circulated on LinkedIn, Twitter, even TikTok. Survivors of financial abuse reached out from all over the world. And more importantly, my words had reached the right ears. The FBI called first, then Interpol. They'd been aware of Patrick Vance, but lacked the connective tissue between his shell corporations and the laundering operations. My evidence filled in the gaps. An international task force was formed, drawing resources from the EU, the US, and several Asian countries. The investigation moved fast. Raids were conducted in 3 countries. Assets were seized, real estate, yachts, bank accounts hidden under false names. Patrick himself was arrested in Lisbon, attempting to board a private jet with falsified documents. But the wave didn't stop with him. The fallout reached the officials who'd protected him, sparking internal probes and resignations. By the end of the year, a new piece of legislation passed in the U.S., the Digital Asset Transparency Act. It required stricter KYC protocols for crypto exchanges, imposed real-time transaction reporting for large transfers, and criminalized the use of privacy mixers for unregistered wallets. Similar laws followed in Europe and parts of Asia. For the first time, it felt like the tide had turned, not just for me, but for anyone who'd been a target of the shadow economy Patrick had thrived in. In the midst of it all, I filed the paperwork for my new company, Phoenix Consulting. Our mission was simple: provide financial guidance and digital security tools for women who'd been victims of financial abuse. The first clients came through referrals, then through word of mouth. Each one was a reminder that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something that outlasted the damage. Months later, I stood in the living room of my new home. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, falling on a bare wall where I'd already decided what to hang. I opened a box and pulled out the small gold key that had once symbolized a promise someone else had broken. This time, it wasn't a prop in someone else's dream. It was mine. I hung it on the wall, centered and level, and stepped back to look at it. The metal caught the light, no longer a token of what I'd lost, but a marker of what I'd reclaimed. My life, my work, my future, built on my own terms. Outside, the world was still noisy, still messy. There would always be another Patrick Vance somewhere, but now I knew exactly how to fight them, and I wasn't fighting alone.